Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm really excited for today's video. It is going to be a palette themed video and I'm fingers crossed hoping I have my life together enough that I'm ending the year with a palette week. But I make no guarantees and I'm just kind of like filming my palette videos that I have planned out when I can make them fit. So I'm filming a palette video today. Today I'm going to be doing the top 3 palettes in every category that I saw Angelica do, as well as Samantha March. I added a few categories to mine, so I believe I have 10 categories that I have 3 palettes in each of those categories to share with you guys today. You guys know I love palette themed content on this channel, so I'm very excited to share some palettes with you guys. So if you're interested in seeing my top 3 in every category, stay tuned. First, if you have yet to subscribe to my channel and you like project planning content, palette themed content, or just chit-chatting about makeup, I would love if you'd consider subscribing before moving on. And other than that, let's jump into the video. All right, guys, like I said in the introduction, who knows if I have my life together enough to actually make a palette week happen. My life is like exceptionally pure chaos right now. This is the first, I have all my palette videos planned out, but this is the first one I'm sitting down to film. I don't know what order they'll go up in, etc. But today we're going to be talking about my top 3 palettes in every category. I will have Samantha and Angelica's videos linked down below. But before we get into it, I am super excited that today's video is again in collaboration with Ana Luisa. You guys know I've worked with them a ton in the past. I continue to get excited every single time that I get to work with them because I love their jewelry so freaking much. So I have 3 new necklaces to share with you guys today. I think out of all of the Ana Luisa jewelry I own, I was gonna say their necklaces are my favorite, but it's so hard because like right now I have this ring on, which I believe I got earlier this summer, and I'm like truly obsessed with this ring. I wear it all of the time. And then I also have some of their earrings on too that I've had since like summertime, and I love their earrings as well. What I love about their necklaces specifically though is they're just like so dainty and like timeless and classic that they like just add that extra something to a look that just like, you know, like if you were to wear like a white tank and like Daisy Duke shorts and like you'd be cute, but then you just add like this just like timeless piece of like just gold, like small dainty jewelry, and it just adds like, it just like finishes the look off. That is what I absolutely love about Ana Luisa. On top of that, they are a 100% carbon neutral jewelry brand, which I personally don't know any other jewelry brands that are 100% carbon neutral. I'm sure there are some out there, but I personally have never purchased from or don't know of any. So I think that that is absolutely incredible. I love the packaging that they send their jewelry pieces in. All of my jewelry has always come in these cute little cloth like envelope type of things that snap shut, so it's super handy for traveling. Do you guys know when you're traveling and you like put your jewelry in a bag and then like all your necklaces get like tangled together and then like it's just not even worth untangling them, so you never even wear your jewelry? I love the little pieces that they come in to keep your jewelry safe from getting like tangled up with other jewelry. So absolutely adore that. My newest pieces I'm so excited to share. So right now I have on the Willow necklace set, and it's like a 2-layered set. Let me just like scoot even closer. I am like truly obsessed. This is so cute. I used to have this necklace that had a little pendant like this with a Z on it. My daughter's name is Zoe, and it reminds me of that, and I just like love this so much. Again, like summertime tank top, I'm thinking love it so much. Earlier today when I was filming, I was wearing this, which I'm like, it's like my new obsession. It's this really cute gold necklace. I'm sure the videos I filmed today will be up before this, so I'll have some of those linked down below too if you want to see me wearing this. It's just like the most beautiful timeless gold chain, and I'm obsessed. And then my final piece, my final newest piece, is this beautiful pendant necklace right here. This is called the Miche, and it has this really beautiful green stone on it. I'm like obsessed with green, and I'm thinking of this with just like an ivory top or like tank top in the summertime. So excited for it. Those are my 3 newest pieces. Ana Luisa is running an end of the year sale that has buy one get one up to 60% off, which is so exciting, such a good deal. And then they will also have some of their best sellers on sale for 10% off. So I will have a link down below. That is not an affiliate link. I do not earn commission off that, but it just lets Ana Luisa know that I sent you to their website. So if you want to shop through that, I would highly appreciate it. And as always, thank you guys so much for just allowing me to have these opportunities, even to work with Ana Luisa. I know the first time time I got to work with them, I just like honestly didn't even believe that they were like emailing me to reach out and ask. And every single time I get to work with them, I truly do get so excited just because I think that their pieces are such high quality. I've never had any issues with like my neck turning green. I've never had any issues with tarnishing or anything like that. And I've like been wearing these earrings without taking them out for like the last probably week and a half. And I've had no irritation. I've worn them obviously in the shower, etc. Great quality pieces starting at $39. So don't forget to go check out their website and check out their end of the year sale. After that, let's jump into my top 3 palettes in every category. Okay, so I have 3 palettes to share in 10 separate categories for you guys today. So I'm gonna quickly just tell you all the 10 categories so you know kind of what to look out for. I have the neutral category, the colorful/rainbow category, the monochromatic category, mini/small, affordable/drugstore, luxury high-end, or I do have a luxury, and then I also did a high-end category. I have new releases, indie, and that's it. So maybe 9 categories? 9 categories, sorry. So I have those 9 categories to share palettes with you guys today. So we're gonna kick it off with neutral, my top 3 neutral palettes within my collection that I reach for the most when I'm just looking for a neutral. This was tough because I feel like I have so many neutral palettes that I love, but truly I think the ones I find myself reaching for the most, up first I have the ABH Sultry palette. I will not be mentioning the ABH Jackie palette in this category because I find that one has those pops of color that I didn't want to include it in the neutral. Like this is like pretty much straight neutral. So here is my ABH Sultry palette. This is what this one looks like. This truly is just like one of my staple, most used palettes in my collection. It's something that I reach for at least once a week, if not more. I find myself so consistently reaching into this palette. I love it so much. This is something I wasn't considering purchasing when that first released. I thought it was like the most boring looking palette ever, and I'm so glad that I picked that one up. At the beginning of the year, I purchased the Nabla Side by Side palette. This is what this one looks like. This one obviously is pretty reminiscent of the ABH Soft Glam, which was a favorite of mine, and I absolutely adore Nabla as a brand, and this palette is no exception. I think that this is so beautiful. I love that you have your neutrals, but then you also have these fun pops of like shimmery pinks. So this can really take you from like casual day or like business casual to like glitz and glam night. It's a very versatile neutral palette and I just adore it. And then the third palette is my Artist Couture Supreme Nudes palette. I think Artist Couture makes such a good palette, such a good eyeshadow. I'm a huge fan of the palettes that come in like the packaging like this. I love the Supreme Bronze palette. I just mentioned that in my top 10 like favorite purchases of the year. And I also just purchased the like snack, like the bite-sized palette that's like this Supreme Nudes. Huge fan of that. I love the pop of green in this one. And then I like that it's like neutral leaning warm. It's just such a good palette. Definitely a favorite within my collection and definitely a top 3 neutral palette in my eyeshadow palette collection. Moving on to the colorful slash rainbow category. Up first, I had to include the Sugar Pill Bite Size palette in this category because this is truly the first palette that like got me interested in colorful eyeshadow. I don't know if it's just like the size that made it feel less intimidating or that this is just such a cute and fun palette, but after playing around with this, I really started to at least try and experiment more with color. Up until when I used this palette, I was terrified of color, and I will say I still am terrified of color. I am just not the most skilled and not the most patient when it comes to my eyeshadow, but truly this made me want to play around with colorful eyeshadow more often, so I had to include this one. I don't think you can get this one anymore, but it is a top 3 in terms of colorful in my collection. Next up, I have the Glamlite Ice Cream Truck palette, or Ice Cream Dream. This is what this puppy looks like. It's such a beautiful palette. So much color, so much variety. I love the pastels, but then you have like some bright, vibrant colors up top as well. And the shimmers are truly my favorite in the palette. I love the Glamlite shimmer formula. It's just like so punchy and beautiful. And this is definitely one of my favorite colorful palettes in my collection. And then for my number 3, I had to go with the Be Perfect Carnival 3 palette because this is really good quality in my opinion, and then you also have just so many colors. But You also have neutrals too. So like if you brought this with you on like a vacation and you just wanted a neutral like look for a night, you could definitely get it with some of the shades up here. This isn't like a full rainbow palette. Like you're definitely still missing, it's like you have your blues and greens, but it's just like still missing a little bit, but also still very colorful, very fun. I love the few shimmer shades and duochromes in this palette as well. Just such a fun palette, so I had to include that one in my top 3. Okay, next up we have the monochromatic category. This is another very neutral category for me. I was thinking about like my like Juvia's like the mauves palette or the pinks, but when I think of like monochromatic palettes and truly like favorites, these 3 were the 3 I had to choose. So up first, I knew I was going to choose my Dose of Colors Baked Browns palette. I have a couple of eyeshadow pans in here. I'm really close to pan on this shade, and this is just such a this is just a very easy monochromatic brown palette to reach into. I don't know if you could necessarily consider this like truly monochromatic. Like, yeah, because it's all browns, right? We're counting it for this category for me. Then I chose the Urban Decay Naked Honey, and I don't necessarily know that you could count this as monochromatic, but in terms of like warm honey looks, I don't know. Maybe I'm cheating completely in this monochromatic category, but I love the formula in the Urban Decay Naked Honey specifically. I always love the way that my eyeshadow looks turn out when I use this palette, and if I'm looking for like a warm brown look, this is often the palette that I'm reaching for, so I wanted to include that. And then finally I have the ColourPop Wild Child palette. Again, I have some of the like the On Cloud Blue palettes from ColourPop, but this truly is one of my standout palettes from the year. I love this palette so much because it does go a little bit deeper than ColourPop sometimes does. I think you can get such beautiful, sultry, like smoky looks out of this, and I just truly adore this palette. And like, this is monochromatic, right? Or am I totally cheating in this category? I really don't know. All right, next up we have the small or mini category. So for that, first and foremost, I knew this was like going to be included, this hands down. This is my Natasha Denona mini nude eyeshadow palette. I have 2 eyeshadow pans in here, and I could see myself hitting pan in every single shade in this palette. This was definitely, probably, I haven't like actually looked at where I track everything, but I have a feeling this is one of my most used palettes of 2021. I found myself reaching for this all the time. It's so easy. It doesn't have a lot of versatility, obviously, because it's 5 shades, but if I'm just looking for like, I don't even have to think about an eyeshadow look, I love reaching into this palette. It's definitely a favorite in my collection. All right, guys, I had to take a phone call, so we are back at it. I believe I left off at the Huda Beauty Smoky Obsessions palette. This has been a favorite palette of mine for quite a while. I feel like this is the palette that like kicked off my obsession for the Huda Obsessions palette. I have a broken shade, so I have to be careful, but it's such a beautiful, just like smoky palette. This is a palette that comes traveling with me, hence the broken shade, but it doesn't necessarily come traveling with me anymore because of the broken shade. Used to come traveling with me all of the time. It was like my go-to like evening time eyeshadow palette, and I just absolutely adore that one. I love Huda Beauty eyeshadow in general. I think it can be inconsistent and hit or miss, but in general I like to try all of the Huda palettes that are released. And then the last palette I have for mini / small is this one from Kaleidos. Kaleidos, I don't know. Kaleidos, whatever. This is the Sashimi City palette, and it's this really beautiful warm neutral palette. I love this palette specifically for these 2 shades right here. I always get compliments whenever I do a look with either of those 2 shades, just because they're super punchy, very like intense and shimmery and sparkly. But also this is one that like if I just want to do a matte eyeshadow in the crease, it's super easy to work with. And I do love the packaging. I think that Kaleidos puts a lot of time and effort into just like the theming and the packaging around their products too, which I think makes it super fun. So that is a favorite of mine. Oh my gosh, I just added, I have been like sorting through all of my makeup. I just put on this Tarte Maneater plumping gloss, which I have not tried yet. This was like something that was like sitting in my to test, and it's a plumping gloss, and I'm feeling the tingle, and I'm not loving it because my lips are chapped. Whoopsies. All right, the next category is affordable slash drugstore. I am someone who kind of considers myself a bit of an eyeshadow snob. I'm not super into drugstore eyeshadow. I do like ColourPop though, and I've dabbled a bit in BH Cosmetics this year. So I have 2 ColourPops and a BH Cosmetics palette to share. This year from ColourPop, I already mentioned I loved the Wild Child palette, but the Cabana Club palette really impressed me. I thought that this was such a fun one with a good kind of range of colors, and I have reached for this one quite a bit more than I thought I would when I purchased this. This is something I didn't purchase right away when it released. It wasn't something I was super interested in, but I purchased the Lush Life palette, and I think I wanted to get free shipping, so I just tossed this one in my cart as well, and I became a huge fan of it. I actually really enjoy this pop of blue too. I think it's super fun, and I was a big fan of that one, and then also the Limoncello palette this year. I believe I included this in my top purchases in 2021. This I just absolutely adore. I love the neutrals, but like they're like different neutrals, if you will. Like, do I have these probably in other palettes? Yes, but it's not like all the same brown. Like, I like that you have the yellow, and then I like that you have a shimmery green, and there's just the shimmers in here are also super fun. This is a palette that I like felt myself really wanting to reach for even after I had used it and tested it and felt like I had my opinion on it. It was a palette I kept wanting to reach for and kept wanting to like bring with me if I was traveling or anything like that. So this is definitely a favorite drugstore slash affordable palette in my collection. And then my number 3 is the BH Cosmetics Weekend Festival palette. This is a favorite palette of mine, or has been a favorite palette of mine for so long. I have a couple of pans in this palette. I think it's such a fun one. Even though I've had this palette for a couple of years, the quality on this is still really nice, and it's a palette that I still really get excited to reach for, so I had to include this one in my top 3 drugstore. Okay, so then in Samantha and Angelica's video, they did luxury slash high-end. I split that into 2 categories, mostly just because I like to talk about eyeshadow. So for my high-end, I did, well, for luxury, I did $65 and up, and then for high-end, I did like lower than that, but also not drugstore. So for my top 3 high-end palettes, I had to include the ABH Jackie palette. You guys know, if you are a longtime subscriber on my channel, I have been raving about this palette for so long. This has been a favorite palette in my collection for so long, so I had to find somewhere to include this palette. And in terms of high-end palettes, this remains one of my favorite palettes, still a top contender. I know you can't get this one anymore, which is such a bummer, but I had to include that one. Also, the Persona Identity 1 palette, I have the old packaging. This does have updated packaging now, but this is such a good one. This I could have also included in like the neutral category, but again, I tried to include as many palettes as I could in this video. The shimmers in this palette are incredible, especially if you feel like I have hooded eyes, and sometimes I feel like certain shimmery eyeshadows can kind of age me, but these are so smooth. I just think that they are absolutely stunning, and I love just like the neutral mattes in here blend really easily as well. I'm never disappointed with my look when I use this palette, so I wanted to include that one. And then also, this one is newer to my collection this year, but I have been a big fan of the Wild Tiger palette from Huda Beauty. This one reminds me a little bit, like color story wise, of the Kaleidos Sashimi City palette. I love this middle like duochrome pinky green shimmery shade. It's so beautiful, and while this is kind of like a basic color story, if you will, it's like a twist on basic, because I don't necessarily have these same warm matte shadows throughout my collection, and I felt like the quality within the like Wild Obsessions line from Huda Beauty was all really good. There have been some Obsessions lines that just have not been top-notch quality for me, but I was really impressed with this one, and I'm a huge fan. And then for the luxury category, this was not hard at all. So up first, I have my Natasha Denona Gold palette. I adore this palette with my whole heart. I love the matte brown shadows in here. They are like all my just like ideal perfect matte brown shadows. The 2 green slash gold shimmery shades are so freaking gorgeous. Literally every shade in this palette, with the exception of the 2 blues, I could do without, and maybe do like different green shimmeries I would love. But I just adore this palette. I don't know what I would do if I lost this palette or if this palette broke, because it's truly a favorite in my collection. And then I also had to include the Pat McGrath Mothership 5, the Bronze Seduction palette. Again, like this quad of special shades I freaking adore. I love the 2 matte brown shades. This gold is probably my favorite gold in my entire collection, and I just freaking adore this palette. It's such a good one. So expensive, would recommend trying to get on sale, but I do love it. And then the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. Oh my goodness, does it feel like my life right now is just like in a whirlwind of Mercury Retrograde. But this is what this palette looks like. It's just such a fun palette. It's a little bit of like a twist on Huda's palettes, just because I feel like normally she does such neutral palettes, which you get your neutrals in here, but then you also have these fun pops, and a lot of these shades are really punchy, really beautiful, and I just adore this palette. I think it's so much fun. If you're like a neutral lover but want to experiment with color, I would recommend this palette, and sometimes you can find this one on sale. So I adore it. Definitely a top 3 luxury palette in my collection. Okay, then I thought it would be fun to do a top 3 indie palettes in my collection, and I will say I do not have the largest indie makeup or indie palette collection, but I do have 3 indie palettes that I love and wanted to share. I consider Lunar Beauty still to be an indie makeup brand, even though it was in Sephora for a brief period of time. And I really, really love all of the Lunar Beauty eyeshadow palettes that I've tried, but my favorite would be the Lunar Eclipse palette. I love the row of neutral brown shades, but then you have these fun metallic pops and these fun, deeper, cool, like blues at the bottom. I just think it's a really beautiful palette. Again, I love the Lunar Beauty eyeshadow formula, so I wanted to include that one. And then also I have 2 more from Kaleidos. I love Kaleidos. I love their eyeshadow formula. So I was going between one of my Kaleidos palettes and the Menagerie Pastel Pup palette, but truly when I think of how often I reach for each of the palettes, I reach for the Kaleidos ones more than I do the Menagerie. So the next one I have is the Kaleidos Angelica collab. This is the Club Nebula palette. You cannot get this one anymore to my knowledge, but it is so much fun. I love the deeper matte shades in this palette, but then the shimmers and the metallics are just so much fun. The duochromes, I think it's such a interesting and unique color story, and I just adore this palette. And then also, I'm a huge fan of the Kaleidos Flower Punk palette. Now this is definitely a different color story, definitely outside of my comfort zone, but I have really enjoyed every look that I've created with this palette this year. These 3 like pinky mauve shades, I created probably one of my most favorite looks that I have this entire year with just these 3 shades right here. I freaking loved it. I love these, like the end green side. I really like to mix with like my Melt Gemini palette or my Melt Smoke Sessions, and then I just think the teals are also a just fun pop, and I think this is just a fun palette in general. I wanted it because I thought it was a fun, unique color story, but I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I do, so I definitely had to include that one in my top 3. And then my last category to wrap it up is new palettes. These are all relatively new, but definitely new to my collection. I thought it would just be fun to do the top 3, my top 3 like new palettes in my collection, or my favorite 3 new palettes. So up first I have the Glamlite Dark Chocolate Martini palette. I thought I would like this palette, but I love this palette. I have loved every single look that I've created with this palette. This is a palette that even though I've used enough to like review it, I continue to want to reach into this. I created looks that I like just stand out in my mind again as like favorites from this year, and I just think it's such a good one. Looking at it in person as opposed to like the teaser photos, there's a lot more range to this palette than I originally thought. Like the tones aren't as like brown, but more like pinky, or even like pinky purple, and I just think it's actually a pretty unique color story. It doesn't necessarily look like it, but when you start to play around with it, it really is a unique color story in my opinion, and I've been really impressed with the Glamlite eyeshadow formula in general. Also from Lawless, I've been a huge fan of the Glam 1 eyeshadow palette. So I was not a fan of the large, the 1 eyeshadow palette from Lawless, but I've really liked both of her smaller palettes that I've tried. I have not tried her original small palette, but I have the baby one, and then I also have the glam one, and this is just a really nice neutral palette. I love the shimmers in the Lawless mini palettes, and I find the mattes are nice because they're more buildable. So for me, who, again, not the best blender, sometimes it's nice to not have like super pigmented shades, and ones that I can like build up and work with are sometimes my preference. So I've been a huge fan of this one as well. And then we all knew it was coming. I love the Rose Quartz palette from Huda Beauty. This might be my new favorite Huda palette, even more maybe than the Huda Mercury Retrograde. I could just maybe see myself reaching into this one more often than that. This is such a beautiful palette if you like purple, pink, mauve toned looks. I love the fun shadows in this palette. Like Cosmic Love, Blissful, and Moon Magic are so beautiful, but also just like self-love all over the eyes without any other shadow is just so beautiful. Even just like looking at this palette makes me drool, but also it's great quality, beautiful on the eyes, and definitely a favorite new palette in my collection. My lighting just changed so significantly because the sun must have just like gone behind a tree. Anyway, that is gonna wrap it up for today's video, talking about my top 3 palettes in all of the categories that we discussed today. I would love to know, what is your top palette or top few palettes in each of these categories as well? Are there any other palette themed video ideas you guys have for upcoming palette weeks for me? I love getting your guys' content ideas. Thank you so much for sticking around to watch today's video. I hope I have palette themed content throughout the rest of the week for you guys. But I appreciate your support and love as always, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye.